piafo, me chia mo wakwa ba edo ba Ghana Kingdom TV. Ena da wo hwe na wa subscribe channel no, share video no, e fama adofo ene ahwefo enyinala. O hwe na o hwe uwi abomodi tire wadwen si wo comment section ho, abotre kwan so. Ahisu abakwasem amane ene amamre. Ghana hensem nkomo eni yedi Ghana hensem na ne headquarters ene hanamo. Otumfour na se Tutu abibio na mekase. Dwumadie bebre no a otu kwan awakọ America mamakudie no yede ne nyina abetu wanim na yewura kudu ye no yama wohu ye koso nyina yama wohu dwumadie akase nyina agusu a ekoso na yewura kopie mu ewo University of Hanfo no eho no na chese nya agorokora na high school for no they said ye anigye ene pepa na convoy a yewura di nam na said ye wiase nyina ehwe yewura Otumfour ewo wiase no na wiase nyina so atese yewura santehene da Sante Kingdom, the King of Kings, Ghana King abepiem abrochimemu na convoy protection ye protect yewura na said the dwumadie no hyehyɛ ye mpanifo di gu akwanso ni nyina timi ye successful no na yewura speech a ode ma eye ajansafo manansafo so ani agi no na kyese animonyam ekwan na yewura ehye asanteman edika akato said ye kobia no ye bema wohunu mako enipa ebotwi na ebusa na animonyam a yewura ekuta no ya Ghana manyankopon ya adum sei na kopon ache yade sei na kopon atimama ye animonyamfo sei se asantehene na wodi dom anim na wo ma dom eye dom na wo ma animonyam eba ewiase nyina ne Ghana force no eno ene yemere nsom ye na ye nyai tobe ne kasatenti wo yawo no watimi ne wakame no ya asantema a break record no afa de age atum obi ahu sei King of Ghana eye asantehene ohene bia enkoda yenko America ni yenhwe America monte so we nye kadetia we nye adum we nye kumasa bonten so we nye enkan abonten so we nye brokum we nye mampon we nye nkransa ye kan na me kan be Otumfour akoko program ahun se tientie no we nye wogwa festival ye no Cape Coast Otumfour ko ye no we eye America masa America yen show for the speech yewura so ede maye mane ba ye di hon komo se de da ye di no
Mema ko bia iri fi amani kotokungen. Mema ko bia iri fi amani kotokungen. Asante chancho tumo champo no fungen. Asante chancho tumo champo no fungen. Asante sesebo smenditien. Asante sesebo smenditien. Ko bia santina de kasangen. Ko bia santina de kasangen. Satu tori wodi nyerisio. Satu tori wodi nyerisio. O personal dia sumjeni asumje ba tatu memi gana menina. O personal dia sumjeni nkabombo asante mami gana menina. Binya sebi anko baby. O binya sebi Bianco baby. Never bakana ne flampo no demli ferisi. Never bakana ne flampo demli ferisi. Ni manga mi goda ko yadungen. Ni manga de goda ko yadungen. Yodo nya dia ko boje jota tot mo champo no fungen. Yodo nya dia ko boje jota tot mo champo no fungen. O to sika sama na de jakungen. O to sika sama na de jakungen. Jakwe bo ba ko jun flawo. E jakwe bo ba ko jun flawo. Ona flawo flampo no demli fawo. Ona flawo flampo demli fawo. O saji fogu nyagwa singen. O saji
On behalf of my dear wife and children, and on behalf of the chiefs and people of Asanteman, I bring you warm greetings. I'm deeply honored to stand before you at Howard University today, an institution whose history occupies a distinguished place in the intellectual, political, and social advancement of people of African descent. I express my sincere appreciation to the Executive Board of the Millennium Excellence Foundation and to the leadership of Howard University for extending this invitation to me and for creating this opportunity for us to reflect together upon matters that concern not merely Ghana or Africa, but the wider historical family of African peoples across the world. Howard University is more than an institution at which knowledge is transmitted and academic degrees are awarded. It's an institution of memory, intellectual courage, social responsibility, and service. Since its establishment, it has helped generations of men and women of African descent to demonstrate that education is not simply a pathway towards individual advancement, but also a responsibility towards society. Its commitment to truth and service makes this university an especially appropriate place to consider the relationship among governance, cultural preservation, traditional leadership, and the reconstruction of meaningful bonds between Africa and its diaspora. The theme placed before us is profound because it brings together three subjects that are too often considered separately. Governance, concerns the organization of power and responsibility. Culture concerns the meaning a people give to their existence. And the diaspora concerns the survival of identity across geography, displacement, and historical rupture. Yet beneath all these three lies one fundamental question. How does a people organize itself, understand itself, and transmit to future generations an inheritance worthy of preservation?
Jean.
My proposition this evening is that traditional leadership, when exercised with integrity, wisdom, accountability, and respect for constitutional government, remains an important part of the answer to that question.
Jean.
Traditional leadership should not be understood merely as an institution inherited from the past, nor should culture be reduced to ceremonial display. Properly understood, both are living resources that can contribute to good governance, social cohesion, peace building, education, development, cultural confidence, and the renewal of relationship between Africa and the peoples of African descent throughout the world. Governance is frequently confused with government. Yet while government refers to the formal institutions of the state, the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, ministries, public agencies, and the administrative machinery through which public policy is implemented, governance is wider. It concerns the manner in which authority is acquired, exercised, limited, and transferred, how resources are managed, how disputes are resolved, how leaders are held accountable, how the vulnerable are protected, and how society defines and pursues the common good.
Jean.
A nation may possess an impressive constitution and yet experience poor governance. It may hold regular elections and still fail to provide justice, security, education, healthcare, or meaningful participation for substantial sections of its population.
Jean.
Institutions do not operate in a moral vacuum. They operate within cultures, habits, expectations, and systems of social obligation. Law is indispensable, but law alone cannot create a good society. A constitution may determine what a public official is permitted to do, but culture helps determine what society believes a responsible leader ought to do.
Jean.
A court may punish corruption after the offense has occurred. Still, society must also cultivate the moral conviction that public resources are held in trust and must not be treated as private property.
Jean.
A judicial decision may determine the legal rights of parties to a dispute, but judgment alone does not always restore damaged relationships within families and communities. Governance, therefore, requires more than institutional machinery.
Jean.
It requires legitimacy, trust, moral restraint, memory, and shared expectations, as well as citizens and leaders who understand that rights are inseparable from obligations and that power is inseparable from responsibility.
Jean.
Traditional African political systems understood this relationship between authority and moral obligation in ways that deserve serious academic attention. Leadership was rarely conceived merely as the possession of unrestricted power. The ruler was expected to protect the community, administer justice, preserve the land, defend the vulnerable, and maintain the people's inheritance.
Jean.
Authority was therefore accompanied by responsibility, and that principle remains relevant to our modern world. Power, separated from responsibility, becomes dangerous. Authority, separated from accountability, eventually loses legitimacy. And leadership that seeks privilege without accepting obligation weakens the institution from which that privilege derives.
Jean.
Permit me in this respect to draw upon the Asante constitutional tradition. The Asante political system is sometimes misunderstood by those who encounter only its visible manifestations: the golden stool, the royal umbrellas, the drums, the gold ornaments, the linquets as they stand here, the swords, the procession, and the great ceremonies of state. These symbols are important because they are the visible language through which memory and authority are communicated.
Jean.
Beneath the splendor lies a sophisticated philosophy of political responsibility.
Jean.
The golden stool is not the private property of the Asantehene. It represents the unity, identity, historical continuity, and collective spirit of Asanteman.
Jean.
The Asantehene is therefore not the owner of the nation, but its custodian, and that distinction is fundamental. The occupant of the golden stool receives an inheritance that existed before him, and which must endure after him. He holds authority temporarily, but he holds the people's heritage in trust. The land, institutions, memories, and moral obligations associated with the stool cannot legitimately be reduced to the personal interests of the individual who occupies it. Because from this perspective, leadership is a form of trusteeship. The idea of trusteeship contains an important lesson for all systems of governance. We hold office temporarily. We inherit institutions from those who came before us. And although we exercise authority in the present, our decisions affect people who are not yet born. The leader who consumes everything for the advantage of the present generation has misunderstood the nature of stewardship. This principle has particular urgency in an age of environmental degradation, uncontrolled exploitation of natural resources, and political decision-making dominated by short-term considerations. We did not create the rivers, forests, land, and ecological systems that sustain us. We inherited them. And whatever our authority may be today, we have no moral right to destroy the inheritance of generations unborn. Traditional governments also remind us. Traditional governance also reminds us that legitimate authority requires consultation. Our people say, "Tikron kwejina," meaning that one head does not constitute a council. And we also say, "Nyansa ni onipa baako tirim," meaning that wisdom does not reside in the head of one person alone. These are not merely attractive proverbs, they communicate a political philosophy. Now, Santihe exercises authority through an established order of chiefs, queen mothers, elders, linguists, and recognized customary officers. Matters are considered, evidence may be heard, historical precedent may be recalled. Different perspectives may be presented, and decisions are shaped by consultation and concern for communal harmony. Consultation does not mean that leadership has no authority, nor does listening diminish the dignity of the leader. The leader who refuses to hear contrary opinion eventually becomes imprisoned by those who tell him only what he wishes to hear. Responsible leadership must therefore create room for difficult truth. The modern world sometimes equates decisiveness with refusing consultation, but our ancestors understood differently. They knew that the strength of a decision may depend upon the quality of deliberation that precedes it. This does not mean that traditional institutions should be romanticized, because no institution, traditional, political, religious, or academic, is beyond criticism or reform. And antiquity alone does not confer moral perfection. Traditional authority must justify its continuing relevance through service. A chief who is concerned only with ceremony, privileges, titles, and public honor gradually diminishes the institution he represents. At the same time, a traditional ruler who listens to his people, protects community resources, promotes education, mediates conflict, assists the vulnerable, and responds to contemporary challenges strengthens both tradition and society. Traditional leadership in the 21st century cannot therefore be limited to festivals and ceremonial occasions. It must be capable of responding to educational inequality, unemployment, environmental degradation, land disputes, public health emergencies, community conflict, and the anxieties of young people. The palace must remain a guardian of memory, but it must also become a workshop for the future. This requires traditional institutions themselves to accept reform, because tradition must never become a shield behind which injustice, corruption, exploitation, or arbitrary authority are protected. The dignity of women and children must be defended. Young people must be heard. Persons with disabilities must not be marginalized. Community resources must be managed responsibly. Land administration must be transparent. And succession and customary processes must be conducted with integrity. The proper defense of tradition is therefore not an insistence that nothing should ever change, but the capacity.
More fearful. Hey, asa, be any hubium. Casatin Timian hubium. Yes, ye nishi kabium, dear yanka. Ye casa, mosi a pecasa. Mosi a gagai. Mosi a Santofor casa, and a Santofor. When a casa, Mapancho, dear Queen, dear Mushi, a casa. Me only a cow, mosi a pecasa no. Ye mosi a gagai. Gagai, man, to say, Yaga, and say, Yanania Santo Cotocohene. Otumfour na na ye yewura no Otumfour ye na na tisika kokoso ye na na tisika Dwekofi so ye na na nam America ye de convert chentie di nanim ye na na ye ka brofo akase we bisa brofo kono te Ghana ni munyam e sha santema ni munyam no yewura na e ba convert akase di nanim no yewura na e ba nipa nyina bo nchanku yi yewura na e ba obi a pija no fon so pese wotwe yewura e se enipa be 1 billion ye egu ho no obi a pese wotwe yewura to no fon so se wo ma hia second Jesus asase so nyame no Otumfour sie tutu bebre na mekese asase so nyame no broni pe na hwe no bibini pe na hwe no akoda pe na hwe no se ewiase nyina e pu Otumfour aiden ahwe no me pa cho we nya bola ne ekopra o we nya bola asemu dabi enti ha no ntimi mfa bola asemu no nkohubi aha no mu ntimi mfa bronche mpem asemu no nkohubi aha no mu ntimi mfa ma ho aye asemu no nkohubi ene ya kan ina apiesie aka apiesie so ye hu obuku bia mu da ena akanfo ina ho ahwani akanfo ina so ntukwan bi se mehu bi se dawo endika akanfo ina apiesie na se yehu no ewiase ina akanfo ina apiesie ena Otumfour se tutu bibi na mekase oso na ya akanfo ina ehene ono na ne odu America no akanfo ina tuntumfo ina bibi oza akanfo ye obrofo so akanfo no me abrofo ina no omu ina na abo chanku a omu be hia yewura Otumfour na se tutu bibi na mekase no me pacho broni ibu ne mu echia bibi ni ibu ne mu chia akoda opani bobu mu ase ena watia Edison name koda solata say Donald Trump who say said ye koso no ya obi ohini bia kingdom bia boni America so a ne convo ne de we nipa asi ho no a odekwa aginisem no say yes said the king of kings ampa enti ewura kunwadie na wodie no asanteman kingdom no asante ni Sikadwa no masa baabi Sikadwa di asante aduru no na se ohini bia wagye nyansa wo fie be ka kire we say Sikadwa kura na atete ene ya pempam a saa wohene no obekoso wa ye yalefo saa obekoso wa ye yalefo bana no asusu saa because oni animonyam da awasase wieso sanse Sikadwa na mu ahenyem animonyam awasase wieso enti se wokase tie Sikadwa a ahenyem animonyam bie ne ho a obenya bi da obe front tutuma ko festival de bia oba wen san obedum de bia obeye se animonyam nyina besa tinano ada wo hwe de course wo mekobono a na wo hwe ahwehene na wo se kan bia ni hia no wahene na wo se Sikadwa bia na wo hwe na blackboard ko mekobono na hwe no ntuma odifra na ho pasa bi ne nanim nyanyanya bi ne tikoto bi o de ko ya na obi na beka to se Sikadwa adome no hwe ni monyam sha ekoso hwe ni monyam sha wa akohweye wahene bia wo Ghana bia nyaaya na nka ba bi Otumfour na ina ko ka ho bi eno nti na ma asanteman ekendom no asanteman ni asantehene amahene na blepon no wo mu ye so proud no sense hwa asante amahene makura na edi akiri amahene edi akiri abepon edi akiri no me pacho amahene abepon aka wo Ghana ina wo nka asanteman wo mu na ni we hunu bi da kopimisi wiase ebeden ebese we ne duabo ye ka no kre no akira mu akanesa asem emenasafo enso so atiase Ghana Kingdom TV yewura tu kwan ye ka to se yewura ne mawdo kra be bi de betie bia no ebe ma no ayeden amanfo nyina ate ti adwumadie na ana yegusu a ye di no koso na subscribe channel na share video no format fo ne ahwefo o hwe na o share o wi abomode kira wadwen enso comment section ho abotre kwan so ye be se share biem e Ghana Kingdom TV